So, Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance is out now, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. However, there is no way on earth I'm going to be able to play this entire game within a week, so I had a bit of a different idea. I wanted to do a mini challenge of the game that'll let me play some of it without having to worry about any super major spoilers. So, what exactly is this challenge? Well, you read the title. I'm going to be trapped in the netherworld, and before I can fight Nuwa and escape, so to speak, I have to take down the golden dragon, Huang Long, or Koryu, or whatever you want to call him. For those familiar with this game, you may know that Huang Long is the strongest boss in this region of the world, not counting DLC bosses, and it's not even close. Now for the rules of this run. I'm going to be playing this on normal mode most of the time. There's going to be a lot of grinding, so when that comes up I may lower it to safety mode so I can just turn my brain off and save some time. Yes, you could do this challenge on hard mode, but that would significantly increase your playtime and do a lot of damage to your sanity. I will be playing on the Canon of Vengeance story mode. You could do this challenge in vanilla SMT5, and you could also do it in Canon of Creation, but this gives us a couple extra bosses to fight and possibly some additional areas to go through. I'm not sure though. Rule 3. Be nice to Miyazu. Okay, this isn't really a rule, just be nice to her. She doesn't deserve to be mean to. Rule 4. Once we enter the netherworld, we are stuck there and cannot leave or even enter the Tokyo Diet Building until we've defeated Huang Long. Rule 5. No Yoshitsune or Mara allowed. Yes, we know they're powerful, but where's the fun in using boring stuff? When you can do something stupid like have Hydra the entire run and wreck house, or have Gog Magog hit the boss for over 2,000 damage. Rule 6. The max level I'm allowed to be is level 75. Yes, I could power level and absolutely slaughter everything, but where's the fun in that? And for the most part, I was planning to try and make it where I'd go no more than 5 levels above the boss. There is one exception, mainly because I thought the boss was level 23 when it turns out she was actually level 18, so yeah. Surprisingly, that fight still is kind of tough, but you'll get to that later in the video. Rule 7. I am allowed to use the Mitama DLC to speed up the farming and grinding process. You can do it without the DLC though, since there are multiple set spawns in the world. I just wanted to save some time. And Rule 8. No DLC party members allowed. For those of you that have played this game, you understand why that last rule was actually a joke. Starting the game, we're given a choice to either take the girl's hand or leave her alone. I chose to take her hand as this puts us on the news story. After that, I provide a fitting name to our protagonist for this run. And then we're given some ominous dialogue, and Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance truly begins. Once we're in the netherworld, you're just going to be forced to wander for a few minutes until the game finally decides to take mercy on you and play a cutscene, where you'll promptly be attacked by some demons named Daemon. Very creative. Then you'll get saved by Aogami and have the obligatory 90s anime transformation sequence. From here, it's your tutorial battle, and even in higher difficulties, you can just spam Zio to win. It's not hard at all. We then come across a pixie who, honestly, you can be as nice or as mean to her as you want. I chose to be a little bit of a jerk, because I think it's funny, and she'll help you out anyways. It's not really a mystery. She wants to be your friend, and she's the tutorial buddy that you get at the start of the game. And honestly, I decided to keep her throughout the entire run. She was actually pretty nice to have around. Then it was just a case of more tutorials until we came across our first abscess. After all that's done, we have more tutorials where we come across our first Aogami corpse, many of which are returning from the original SMT5, but there's some new ones thrown in as well. And in this case, Aogami Type A gives us a nice little passive bonus to our HP and MP. Then we have even more tutorials as we gain access to the World of Shadows, and Sophia welcomes us. But wait, there's more, because Gustav gives us access to fast travel. We can now head from one ley line to another. Oh, but don't rest on your laurels yet, because now we have ourselves an Abscess fight. These battles are often against powered up versions of normal enemies, and acting as a sort of mini-boss, sometimes maybe a proper boss. both obscuring your map and locking away some valuable abilities known as miracles. These miracles provide passive buffs, and most of them are worth getting. This first abscess is also the only truly required one in the game, at least in the original SMT5, and maybe in Vengeance? I don't know, I haven't played that far yet. But either way, the 3 mandrakes will go down pretty quickly thanks to Angmaraki being able to set them on fire, because, yeah, mandrakes don't like being set on fire. Relatable. After that, we encounter a Monozako for the second time. I didn't show the first time because Predas were in it, and let's just say you don't want Predas in your YouTube video if you want your video to stay up. Some people find a Monozako annoying, but I'm gonna be honest, I actually find her character kind of endearing because she tries to be helpful, but she's really stupid and bad at it most of the time. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Then, going forward from here, we get our first true piece of new content known as the Magatsu rails. These act as a way to get around these areas in a much quicker, well, pace, and they have the levels be better connected overall, as well as allowing you to access some brand new areas such as this upper level with gremlins and an Apple of Glory. And lastly, before heading to the train, you get to talk with an Obarian and he'll warn you about some monster with dangerous slashing claws up ahead. And it's already claimed at least 2 victims. I highly recommend you get an Angmaraki if you have not already done so.
I'm fighting to save everyone.
Look out!
What the hell? Where'd he come from?
That creature is Glasya-Labolas, better known as the Beast of Bloodshed.
Okay. Who are you?
I am Yoko Hiramine. Now let's kill this thing.
Glasya-Labolas is the first boss of Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance and a brand new boss added to this new campaign. Being the first boss, it's not that bad, but still not something you should take lightly. You see, Glasya-Labolas is the first example of an enemy with multiple press turns, meaning he can attack you twice each turn, or potentially up to 4 times if he crits or strikes a weakness. However, he only has physical attacks, and there's no way for him to get additional press turns in this fight, at least not by exploiting weaknesses. However, he can still crit you to get press turns, so be mindful of that and be a little bit careful. The keyword being this fight, because I've seen a rematch against him where he'll attack his own teammates to get additional press turns if he thinks it'll help him win. And yeah, you'll fight this guy multiple times throughout the game. But while he can't strike a weakness, yeah, if he charges up his Magatsuhi gauge, just know he's going to be going for crits, and it might be better just to guard, because if you're defending, you block any critical hits from incoming. And this fight also introduces us to guest characters. These are humans that will join your party for a period of time, though in Yoko's case, she's basically with you from start to finish. And I should mention, you want to set your party a little bit carefully. I'd recommend putting Angmaraki in the 4th slot, because slot 2 will be taken by Yuzuru, while slot 3 will be taken up by Yoko. Now, because this is a fairly well-designed game, Glasya-Labolas is going to be weak to Zia, which is the spell you start with, so you can hit his weakness for extra turns, and with the way that you and Yoko are positioned in the team, you can continuously have them spam Zio to ensure you get 8 actions per turn instead of just 4 if you really want to. Yuzuru will always take the 2nd slot, and he's more of an all-around fighter in this battle. His abilities are kind of more going to be buffs and debuffs though, because he has things like Fangbreaker. And then the last slot will be taken by your demon party member, fairy, whatever they've got with you. In this case, again, I recommend Angmaraki because he can tank well enough, but most importantly, he can inflict confusion. No. He can inflict confusion on Labolas, causing him to potentially skip turns or even attack himself for some damage. It's not that hard of a boss fight, but it's definitely tougher than some first bosses in the series, so be careful and be ready.
got away.
So, with our first boss down and Yoko in the party, we've now been introduced to more tutorials, including Fusion, which we'll cover in a little bit, and more importantly, the Haunts, which act as a little safe zone for you to rest and relax while talking with your party members, sometimes for gifts, but more often than not, you can get little buffs or flavor text, and there's even a way that you can give them gifts later on to boost your affinity, so to speak. It's not anything as deep as, say, the Persona links, but it's still nice that it's there. It gives your party members a bit more personality and connection to them. And at least to some extent, it makes them feel a little bit more special and less like replaceable meat shields, but maybe that's just me. This is also the point where the game introduces us to the giant roaming demons, and I'm going to warn you now, do not fight the rock giant. You will die a painful death. This area also has a little bit of new content in Vengeance where you can ride a Magatsu rail up to this little oasis area where you have a respawning red Magatama, and taking them out drops you grimoires. You can think of those as something like rare candies from Pokemon where they're a free level up to your demon party members, as long as they're not exceeding your level. And we can also encounter the green monster from the swamp up here. Okay, that's not its actual name, but like, it's the green monster from the swamp. Now, as for the fusion side of things, I went ahead and created an Obarian, which is just good all around for the early game, and a less good but still important Zun Tunshe, which isn't great, but he gives you a very easy way to complete an upcoming side quest. And by useful soon, I mean useful right away, because you'll almost immediately run into the Hair of Inaba, and with Zun Touche in your party, you can just get this quest done without any effort at all. And shortly after those escapades, we encounter ourselves a mini-boss, the Magatsuhi Slime. Now, Magatsuhi enemies take on a red coloration and are capable of using those charge skills that usually had to be telegraphed in advance without any telegraph whatsoever. This does lead to some pretty comedic deaths and dangerous close calls later on, but for now, this fight isn't hard because, at the end of the day, a level 1 slime is a level 1 slime. What are you expecting? A challenge? Nah, get out of here. Now, with the slime dead, welcome to the field. The first big area of SMT5 with a lot of side objectives you can tackle, the most noticeable being the giant abscess that holds a mini-boss fight against the mermaid. It's a fairly easy foe to tackle unless she spams her unique attack. Defeating her, though, is very important as it provides you with a miracle that allows you to change your affinities and defenses, and you're really going to want that if you don't want to get one-shot by every enemy in the game that has Mudo, and even some enemies in the game that have Zan. Afterwards, we also get another type of side quest known as the Lunar Side Quests. In this case, you're going to help Sitzmittel, Mitzel Spitlick, Moon Lady, find her children. We only need to find 4 in order to finish this quest, but finding 10 will give you better rewards. And while running around, I came across some other stuff, including a quest to fight Dormarth, and the quest line from Mermaid, which is to save her sisters from Pazuzu's curse. We'll cover those later. Finally, I finished up the quest for Moon Lady, and she gave me her fusion recipe for the future, but, well, she's got stats for endgame, so don't get your hopes up too much. Otherwise, they were just some generic go fight these enemy quests, and they give a bit of easy experience, and we receive a warning about a powerful demon at Tokyo Tower, but nothing super standout or spectacular. I ended up doing some training until I reached level 15 and obtained a couple of new party members through fusion, such as Angel, Unicorn, and Fortuna, all fairly useful members in one way or another, with Fortuna being probably my favorite, and Unicorn being helpful against a required boss fight later in the game. And also while ascending the tower, we ran across another, and in my opinion much easier abscess fight against 2 Sudamas that don't last very long. Then we finally would come across this lady is known as Lianan Seed, who will introduce us to diverging path quests, where you side with one party to take out the other, and the party you side with will permanently join your team. It's up to you who you want to side with, but this does impact your alignment, which does technically affect the in-game, at least in a normal playthrough. And it's nothing too major to worry about, just be a little mindful of it whenever you're going for a proper playthrough of the game and not just this weird challenge run. Then, climbing the cliff a little more, you'll reach the ley line right before Tokyo Tower, and it'll be time for a boss fight, but we don't want to fight that boss yet, so let's go do a couple side quests. Now, before we face the big boss at Tokyo Tower, it's time for two optional bosses. I opted to side with Leonon's Seed because she's overall a stronger party member that can be useful longer in the game, but Absars does at least have a bit of use in Vengeance, so pick whoever you like. Now, as a boss, Absars is extremely easy. Oh, fuck, cannot talk. She has an army of Twitch simps that help her out, but they go down after just one or two hits, and she reacts about as well to being set on fire as a regular human does. So, Yoko and Ongmaraki can make quick work of her, and anyone else that's learned Agi can also do the same. Now, unlike some alignment bosses, she doesn't die and instead will run away, but when that's done, you can just go talk to Leonon C to complete the quest and obtain a new party member. Now, next up is Dormarth, and on the other hand, I would say even though she's lower level, Dormarth is a lot tougher to deal with due to her having high agility, and she really likes to spam Mudo. Which, for those who don't know, Mudo can instantly kill anyone with a weakness to it, and you by default start with a weakness to it. So make sure you change your affinity. This is a very dangerous boss fight if you're not careful. I actually didn't change my affinity for this boss fight because I'm an idiot and was lazy, I guess. I don't know why I didn't change it. What the fuck was I thinking? What I can say, however, is that this boss fight has some excellent music backing it. While she isn't exactly easy, Dormarth will still go down to being beaten up repeatedly, just like any other foe in this game, but if she ever charges her Magatsuhi, it's time to make sure you're guarding so you don't accidentally get insta-killed by Mudo, and also just reduce the damage overall. Overall, this fight can be a good bit tougher than some, and if you need to save it for later, I wouldn't blame you, because the reward is, well, it's more to introduce a new mechanic than actually be good. I guess I should probably say get up on the Hydra's back. Anyways, the Hydra is the first big roadblock you'll face, regardless of which version of the game you're playing. He has three things you need to watch out for. His physical attack, his fire, and his poison breath. Oh, he also has Frenzy, which is different from his physical attack and hits everybody, so just a party-wide physical attack. In fact, he's actually made a bit more dangerous in Vengeance because now he has a unique passive where, well, it's known as Pernicious Venom, where he'll do additional damage to poison foes. You could try going for an essence that resists poison, but it's still going to be a bit dangerous. Though Phase 1 thankfully is fairly simple, as he'll mostly just stick to his regular attack until he goes to charge his Magatsuhi gauge. That means he's about to unleash poison on you, which can hit the entire party and poison them, so not only will you take chip damage, but he'll deal additional damage to you going forward. Interestingly, Poison Breath is labeled as a dark element skill, but I don't believe it has the ability to insta-kill the target like other Mudo attacks. That being said, this elemental affinity can be used to your advantage, because if you use a Dark Dampener, it will completely shut down his attack and end his turn instantly. However, once he drops below half health, 8 of his 9 heads will die, leaving him with only the leader left alive at this point. Hopefully you're not poisoned, because for the rest of this fight, he's going to lose his ability to poison you, but he's going to start spamming Frenzy and Flame Breath, which, if you're poisoned, then Pernicious Venom just makes him do more and more damage. And these attacks hit everyone, or can hit random targets multiple times. And they also have a decent chance to crit, though thankfully not an increased chance. I guess the one big mercy here is that as long as you don't have a weakness to fire, at this point you should be good to go. You can also just have Yoko and your protagonist spam ice shards, and the second half of the fight can be bursted down fairly quickly, because by that point he's on his last legs. When Hydra goes down, you'll meet a man named Goko that gives you an item allowing you to warp back to the last used ley line. Yeah, it's your infinite use Homeward Bone, and it's very helpful. As for other advice, well, I'd recommend at this point go back to the Demon Haunt, and do so after every major story boss, as it will provide new dialogue with Aogami, which nets you more stat buffs, and just a bit more character development in general. And otherwise, in the meantime, Pixie ended up learning Mazan, which is pretty cool. It's glad that she's going to be keeping up with the party for a little while. Don't rest yet, though. If we choose to ignore the direction of progress, we can actually instead head left and find a giant petrified Decorabia. These giant petrified demons are going to be free party-wide level ups. Technically, the smart thing to do would be hoard them for the endgame, but this is one of them I recommend picking up now so you can avoid future tutorials, and hey, a little bit of a free level up on everybody never hurt anyone. It's also time to learn the miracle Magatsuhi Wellspring, so now I'll be regaining a bit of health and MP every turn if my Magatsuhi gauge is full, which gives us a bit of a risk-reward system because, you know, do you expend it to do a big attack and a lot of damage, or do you keep it to keep your tanking up? Now it's time to fight Pazuzu, and he's very easy. You see, this boss is also weak to ice, so you can use pretty much the same strategy you did for Hydra, except it's a one-phase battle instead of a two-phase battle, and there's no real status effects to worry about, and Charm works on it, and yeah, Pazuzu's just not very strong. After he's dead, though, you can go report back to Mermaid and get the next quest in her chain, as we need to find and get the help from a goddess known as Anahita. I hope you're ready, boys and girls, because it's time for more wandering, because if you head past the oasis where Pazuzu resided, you'll come across some city streets areas that is actually completely optional unless you're going for side quests. But there are some good treasures here, and I would recommend trying doing it now, because if you do it later, there's going to be a powerful boss that'll be roaming this area. Also, try to avoid the Zens, they're jerks that always make a beeline for you. Otherwise, you may want to pick up Tsuchigumo Essence and also fight Tsuchigumo here. And there are some treasure chests that contain things like beads. It's helpful, and you know, I mean, if you're going for things like Mimon, whatever, they're good. And you won't come across a lot of beads because they're full heal items, so they're in limited supply unless you get extremely lucky with gifts. Now, when I was heading back to Tokyo Tower, I ran across a Magatsuhi Turdak, who I thought was going to be easy to bring down as he's just a skeleton monster. But then he busted out Freikugel EX and nearly one-shot my character. I survived with 8 HP, but do not underestimate the Magatsuhi enemies or you really will look like a jackass. And finally, after enough horsing around, I went the way you're actually supposed to go and reached the ruined city. Here, you can either choose to climb the mountain, and I mean, yeah, you can go ahead and snag a Hydra, which, hey, I kind of recommend. Those guys are really good, but I already fused one. So, for now, I chose to stick to the main city area, and we'll worry about the mountain later. I also found the Apsaris Essence around here, and it's one I can recommend getting for your character because it will get rid of your weakness to Mudo and Zan, and it will also give you resistances against some status effects like Charm, which will be coming up soon. Otherwise, we have ourselves another Abscess fight, this time against an Ippon Dotara who has status resistances that he doesn't normally have, but otherwise it's fairly easy. His strategy is just go Unga Boonga, and while that can work in some games, he does not have the stats to pull this off properly. It's too early in the game, my guy. You are going to die. There's also another side quest to go up this little cliff area and collect Yatayu's eggs, and we get a really funny scene with a meme on here with Yatayu just waiting patiently for us to get done talking. Anyways, an Nightverse wants some Yatayu eggs for an omelet, and I do love the premise, but be careful, you don't want to get into a boss fight against the big bird, as you don't really stand a chance right now, but you will stand a chance sooner than you think. And as you advance, you will soon be warned of another boss fight by Aogami. And yeah, this is actually a new boss, so be ready.
This is the sacred home where the Kadishtu offer up prayers to our god. The most hallowed resting place of the Mother. The primordial chaos who shall one day awaken again.
It's time to fight your first member of the Kadishtu, the new antagonists that were added to Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance. And I would say make sure you have an affinity with something that isn't weak to Mudo. That's the most important thing, or you're going to be rolling the dice every time she casts it and risk getting one shot. I'd recommend the Apsaris Essence once again, because it's neutral to everything she can do, and it nullifies Charm, which is her main status effect. She always opens up by casting things like Capitulate to Pleasure, which not only can charm the entire party, but remove any buffs you may have, and looking at setup builds and laughing in their face, as well as resisting every status effect, and as well also every element other than light. Though there is one big hole in her plan, and that's that she's weak to physical attacks, meaning you could turn on auto battle and double the damage you deal in this fight if you so wish. This fight has to be, well, it has a lot of potential to be tough, but remember how I said she resists status effects and didn't say she was immune to them? Yeah, Andras managed to inflict sleep on her twice with Dream Needle, so I just got to wail away on her for most of the fight. I really wish there was more to say about this fight, but honestly, it just kind of turned into me smacking her for a while and her getting hit by status effects until she was already down to the last third of her health. At that point, she finally got to use the move Capitulate to Pleasure, which tried to charm the party, and it worked on Unicorn and Andras, the two who were supposed to resist charm. Great job, guys. Otherwise, the only time she ever directly attacked me at all was using Mudo on me one time for 18 damage, so yeah, if you don't know this fight's coming, it can be a challenge, but if you do, you just sort of win, and even then, Aogami clearly warns you before the fight begins, and in the new version of the game, you can save anywhere you want, so you shouldn't struggle here too much. After Nama, you're basically near the end of the required parts of the netherworld. You'll get blockaded by some angels, and, well, they'll give you a mission to, hey, go up the mountain, fight Eelor. Before you do that, maybe talk to Shikioji. He'll give you a fetch quest to find some stuff. I don't know. There's really not a lot to say at this part, because it's just kind of that last stretch before the exciting things happen. So, let's just get to the Eelor fight. I'm not doing any fancy intro for this one, because Eelor is more of a mini-boss than a boss. The only difference is that he's required, unlike some of these other fights. And this boss is very much a hit it till it dies that poses basically no trouble at all. I really wish I could say more, but just hit Eelor with Zio and then hit Andras with Hama. and if you don't insta-kill the Andres, then you get press turns off of him. After he dies, I mean, there's more story beats, but it's not a... Now, after you've defeated Eelor and you've reached the Diet Building, Sophia will give you the Menorah of Knowledge. We'll worry about this later. And I also took the time to do some other things like fuse a Pyrojack, who will be helpful in an upcoming boss fight, and he's also part of a very special fusion, so to speak. But there was one thing that was terrifying that happened. You see, while exploring, I ran into a Magatsuhi Ippon Datara. I made the mistake thinking this fight would be easy, because even though Turdak was a bit scary, I mean, surely there won't be another big surprise in store, and hey, the Abscess Ippon Datara was a joke. Well, about that. Remember how I said Magatsuhi enemies can use their charge skills immediately? He busted out Big Bang and proceeded to wipe my party. There was no fanciness to it. I just died. It was honestly hilarious, but it was kind of terrifying in the moment. And since I survived the first one, he decided, hey, I'm gonna do it again. Then, otherwise, not too much to say over in this part of the world. We run across our next Abscess, this one having us battle two different Shishas that love to spam Zionga. They can be a little bit dangerous, but ultimately they shouldn't be too bad. Just be careful, because I do think they put up more of a fight than the other ones so far. And once they go down, you get the Almighty Mastery, as well as Skill Manifestation, which Almighty Mastery and Physical Mastery are great because they boost the damage of, well, your Almighty and Physical attacks, which you've probably been wanting to get boosted for a little bit. Now, as for Skill Manifestation, that is one of the most important ones, because that is one of the ways your party is able to learn new skills after they have already maxed themselves out without having to use demon essences or anything like that. And the other one being motivation levels increasing in a haunt, where it's a random chance. Or at least a seemingly random chance. I haven't data mined or looked into it yet. Now it's time we actually begin progressing the main point of this whole challenge. So we're going to climb this mountain, and it's very linear to navigate, but you can come across the Aitvaris, which if you haven't picked up, I recommend doing so, as his signature attack is a stronger Aguilau that can blind enemies. It may sound silly, but he was actually a full-time team member alongside Pixie, and you'll see why later. Otherwise, we have our final Abscess battle of this challenge, and this is against 3 Leonon Seeds, and they all died on the second turn. It wasn't that difficult. Now, up here in the mountain is also going to be where you'll be able to speak with both Anahita and Huang Long to get those quest lines going, or concluded, I guess, in Anahita's case. But thankfully, we don't need to worry about that quite yet, because the game designers decided to put a ley line up there in the mountains to save you a bit of time, and I very, very much appreciate that. Otherwise, we've done all the exploring there is to do, so now it's more or less time for the boss rush to cap off this challenge, and there's a lot of fights, so let's get started. First up on the chopping block is Shiki Oji. As a thanks for finding his 3 talismans, he'll instantly throw you into a boss fight. Now, this is a boss that resists physical, which means now your physical damage is going to be reduced by half, but that also means he's immune to random critical strikes. You can still crit him with a Monogatari critical, but you won't be getting any luck in there, and no crit boosting items or anything else will work. You have to use a special thing that forces to crit. That being said, there's no real points for guessing what a paper golem is weak to, and taking him out nets you a talisman, but that's about it. It's not hard. The, I guess, challenge you could say comes from it showing up out of nowhere. Next up on the boss rush, we have yet another enemy that resists physical, and that is Oni. But he'll actually put up quite a bit more of a fight than Shiki Oji does, because, well, he only really throws out punches, so to speak. He has at least some party-wide attacks he can hit you with. Still, it's an overall very easy fight, and not a lot to talk about here. What is really neat though is that in SMT Vengeance, they've added a new side quest with Halphus where you're able to help find them a home and help Oni get back on his feet, so to speak. I like it. Now, at this point, I think we're ready to start the big quest of this entire challenge run and the entire point of this challenge run, so let's go meet with Huang Long. Now, at this point, he will talk to you and want to test you in a trial of sorts. Here, he will set forth the 4 elemental gods, and you have to face them. Though, he says they're likely too tough for you right now. How little he knows. These 4 gods are... Okay, I'm gonna butcher this. Zhanwu, Zuke, Baihu, and King Long. Or probably better known by their Japanese names, Genbu, Suzaku, Byako, and Mizuchi. I'm saying this now because I'm going to screw this up. Either way, you are strong enough to take on Zhanwu, which is what we're going to do, as he's in the low 20s while all the other elemental gods are in their 40s. Now, as far as the fight goes, Rainy Turtleoid over here is actually pretty easy, primarily sticking to ice attacks and buffing his defenses, but Raccoonda can easily offset that, and we have plenty of strong fire options between Yoko, Idvarus, and Pyrojack. Also, Bicorn can be surprisingly useful in this fight thanks to his ability to boost damage of all your critical hits your party deals in battle, and the fact that you can guarantee critical hits with a Mogatoki critical. Either way, with that, we've taken down our first of the 4 elemental gods, and it's time to take on our next roaming monster that's not even remotely related to them. And now it's time to take down the bird that probably gives new players a fair bit of grief on their new playthroughs, Yatayu. He may look imposing, and in truth, he is kind of dangerous, but don't worry, by this point you can take him. He resists every single ailment, but a resistance is not an immunity, as we saw with Nama, so spam whatever works and have fun. Otherwise, be careful about who you use because he absorbs wind attacks, and if an attack is absorbed or reflected, your turn is basically done then and there. All is not lost, however, because he has a weakness to Mudo, which means Yoko can absolutely tear into him and knock him down to size, on top of there being a chance, however slight, of instantly dying. At least, I think? I don't know, maybe Vengeance got rid of that? Who knows, who cares? This boss can be a bit of a pain to hit because he loves to spam Tsukukaja, meaning he'll be very accurate and dodgy at the same time, but thankfully he didn't dodge a single time in this fight, and it's nowhere near as bad as an other evasion heavy boss in this game and series. Now, as for offense, he only really has physical attacks in Zanma, so if you have a tank like Nozuchi, he can be great for dealing with this fight, because even though he can hit hard, Nozuchi will tank it and counter, just hopefully not countering with a wind attack, because then it's really goofy. And yeah, otherwise, if he goes for Magatsuhi charge Zanma, I would say guard if you have someone weak to win, but his AI isn't the best, and he's actually wasted it on Fortuna before, which makes for a very easy win. Yeah, I don't know. Despite his level, he's not as hard as you would expect. Next up on the chopping block, we're going to finish up Mermaid's questline, and we have a boss fight against Anahita, and you'd think she does a lot of ice attacks, but you'd be mistaken, as this boss once said focus a lot on holy attacks of all things for a lot of the fight, while her only regular ice attack is Bufu? Okay, weird. Not exactly scary, however, when her Magatsuhi charges, get anyone weak to ice out of there because she's going to go for her signature attack, which does in fact do high ice damage. Lastly, she has party-wide debuffs that she will love to spam, but overall this fight was fairly painless, if only because I forgot she was lower level during her boss battle. I honestly thought she was level 27, but no, she's like level 18 in this fight. Either way, once you do take her out though, you get her fusion recipe, which is cool because she's good, and Mermaid will offer to become a navigator in the future. This is neat, but sadly useless in this challenge run because we're stuck with a Monozako, for better or for worse. And I would say at this point it's time to grind, but do y'all remember that menorah Sophia gave us? Yeah, it's time for pain. It's time for suffering. Are you ready for a challenge, boys and girls? Because here we freaking go. Or, that's what I would say, but prior to the fight I was messing around with fusion and got my first fusion accident, netting me Kaya no Hime. Not playing at all, but she's okay and otherwise couldn't be obtained in this challenge, so I guess I'll take it. I also went back to the haunt and realized that you can actually speak with Algami after the Allegor fight because apparently it's a significant enough boss fight for a free buff, and hey, I ain't gonna say no to it. Then it was time for the big fight. I will say, make sure you're not weak to Zahn, or you will not live to regret it.
1. Would you care to know why? Then let us begin! To the one who draws more blood, more cheers goes the victory!
Now, as for this boss fight, Matador is somewhat similar to his battle in Nocturne, where he's always going to start out by casting Red Capote, which will max out his agility. However, unlike previous games, it only lasts for a couple of turns in this battle, and his AI doesn't immediately recast it if you get rid of those buffs. But don't worry, this battle has its own brand of bullshit, with Crippling Blow as his unique skill. Anytime he crits or strikes a weakness, there is a chance, a very realistic chance, that the game will instantly kill the impacted target. If you have a way to survive that, the rest of the fight isn't too terribly bad. Just be ready for a long battle, because not only is he bulky for this point in the game, but his agility is high enough to dodge attacks often. And lastly, if he ever charges up or goes for his Magatsuhi skill, make sure you guard, because Andalusia's coming out, and the last thing you need is instant death calls by guaranteed crits. On top of that, you definitely don't want a crit Mazan hitting the entire party. And remember, if you're guarding, you can stop crits from taking place. Now, with him defeated, we obtain the Menorah of... Actually, I don't even remember which menorah we get. Anyways, more importantly, we get the ability to fuse him in the World of Shadows. Now, you may say, but that's DLC, that's cheating. Well, not exactly. You see, in Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance, this is actually a boss fight in the base game, so I consider him fair game. Plus, well, I mean, come on, it's a chance to use the funny skeleton man.
Well done! It would appear my power now rightfully belongs to you. Lest we forget that by defeating us, you will be granted the power of the fiends, the very power of death.
Now, with Matador dead, the next strongest boss is going to be level 43. Yeah, I had to do a lot of grinding, so I made use of Gospels and Grimoires from farming the Mitamas to save myself some time and sanity, and eventually reach level 40, which is special because it allows us to fuse Alice, arguably the strongest... Well, let's just say she's the MVP of this run, with her only competition being Idvaris, hilariously enough. First up on the elemental chopping block, well, technically that was Genbu, but he's dead. So now we have Zuke, Suzaku, whatever the heck you pronounce it as, and we're finally a high enough level, so yeah, being a bird of fire, it takes little to no effort to guess what she's weak to, and yeah, it's ice. She's also surprisingly weak to charm as well. I don't know, there's really not a lot to say about this boss fight. It's actually really easy, and I was surprised by how quickly she went down. The one attack you really do need to watch out for is her Sleep Breath attack, because that can put your entire party into, well, sleep status. But even then, that's a fairly low threat when it's just fighting her. Foreshadowing is a literary device hinting at something that will happen in the future. Next up on the list is Byakko, who tries to shake me down for money? Anyways, I probably should have saved this guy for last. I remember him being level 43 in the original SMT5, but this time around he seems to be level 49, and he's weak to Zan. Despite being a beast of lightning, he's only really going to use Mazio during his Magatsuhi charges, otherwise he'll just rely on his physical attacks. Also, strangely, his main ailment he casts is Confusion, even though Confusion is the ailment he's weak to. I don't know. It's weird, but okay, whatever. The only physical attacks, though, can backfire in his face because that results in, well, you get some funny combos like Taunt and Tetrakarn to turn this fight into a bit of a joke. I didn't even need to worry about his Magatsuhi gauge, he was that easy. Of course, that's all what I would have said about this fight, but near the end of the fight, he ended up dodging Yoko's attack, ending my critical turn where I would have killed him and proceeded to tear Alice and Power apart out of nowhere. This fight went from being locked in and an easy win to a very desperate fight for survival, as he pulled out some Undertale-ass determination and began ripping through my team, to the point I only survived with 5 HP. A lot of bosses so far had been fairly easy with this challenge if I was prepared. This was not one of those bosses. But hey, surely the rest of this challenge can't be that bad, right? Surely there won't be any other bosses that give me a lot of grief out of nowhere. Ha ha ha. Now, after that nightmare, I decided I needed a bit of a break before tackling Mizuchi, so I went after one of the other quartets in this game, though the only one we can actually fight in this challenge is here because they're spread across 4 separate regions of the world, and that would be the first of the 4 Devas in SMT Vengeance, Kamokuten. Out of all the recurring bosses in the series, this is probably the most inconsistent of them, changing his design and weaknesses across the installments quite often. This is a boss that's going to rely heavily on debuffs in his strategy to the point where his first turn he pretty much always will open by debuffing you, either using Masakunda to lower your agility, Marakunda to lower your defense, or Fangbreaker to deal a bit of damage and lower your offense, before following up with a party-wide physical attack like Crushing Blow. If you have a party member with Marakukaja and Masuku-Kaja, you've effectively nullified the main gimmick of this fight. However, I only had Masuku-Kaja and only Anyadayu, so I had to do a bit of gambling with this fight where I was dodging stuff, but any one wrong move or one unlucky hit could kill me. Thankfully, I managed to win this fight on my first try. Now we have our final elemental god to tackle, King Long, aka Mizuchi, and I used to find him the most dangerous as he flies around the field and will harass you when you try to grab collectibles. However, at least in Vengeance, and maybe just because I've now played this game a time or two, he's actually weaker than Baihu at only level 45, and for some reason, despite being the Dragon of Wind, he only has the super weak Wind Breath attack as his Magatsuhi skill. Otherwise, he's packing Bufala, so I guess mind your resistances a little bit, but the only super standout part of this fight is his move Eat Whole, which will deal damage and recover some of his HP, but even then, that's just a draining skill with a physical attack stat. Overall, compared to the last 2 boss fights, King Long's kind of a joke, but either way, we've defeated all 4 elemental gods, so I guess we should go see Huang Long and get our reward, right? Now, with the 4 gods defeated, we can speak to Huang Long, and he congratulates you for your efforts, but he says he has a final part of this test, and, well, he wants you to defeat him in battle. Thankfully, he's nice enough not to force you into a battle right away, but just to show what we're up against. He resists the 4 regular elements, he's packing all Dying Tears skills that are multi-target spells, and his main move is Megidoleon plus 5, a buffed version of the strongest regular almighty attack in the game. For those who don't know, almighty attacks cannot be blocked under any circumstances either. They can be dodged though. Even the RNG heavy Mitamas are not immune to almighty attacks. but interestingly, he is weak to both sleep and blinding, and darkness does still strike a weakness if you really need to hit one. Keep that in mind in the future, it's going to be important later, but for now, we're just going to die. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, I don't know, depends on what you decide, we do have one more roaming demon we can face in the meantime, and that's the first giant we came across, the Goliath Oyamatsumi. Stronger than any other roaming foe we've seen, but he is weak to blind of all things, so maybe we should phone a friend. In fact, Hydra actually makes this fight super easy due to his ability to hit the enemy and inflict Mirage at the same time. Now, as for Phase 1, well, I guess you could say Phase 1, it's not really a clear distinction. The fight will go fairly smoothly, he's just going to do basic attacks. The real worry comes in when you get to Phase 2. You see, Phase 2 is where things can start falling apart if you're not careful, as he's going to start actually trying, where he'll bust out moves like Crusher Onslaught, Mabufu Dine, and Ice Draco Strike, allowing to him to deal a lot more damage and even hit weaknesses that you may not be thinking about. And while he doesn't have the best accuracy in the world, he has the highest health bar of any boss we've faced so far, so the fight's going to take a while. Now, with Oyamatsumi dead, there's no major opponents left other than Huang Long, and we're a good 20 levels off, so it's time to farm yet again. I kept the DLC Mitamas on the whole time to salvage my time and my sanity, but there's a fair number of guaranteed Mitama spots you can take advantage of for levels if you need to. I will say though, you may want to save the statues for a little bit longer until you've gotten your final team put together, and after a lot of grinding, it was done and my main team had been assembled. Our party was formed and our team was assembled. We had Melchizedek, a reasonably good tank that could survive the opening onslaught for other party members, and hey, in the best case scenario, he might even give a counter-strike in or two. Gogmagog, the physical monster that could tear through anything and take hits for days as long as he's not weak to it. Mott, the funny man. Pixie, our emergency support and kind of our lifeline in this battle. In case everything else goes south, we can always bust her in to get some emergency healing off and some buffs out. Yoko, the second party member that can use items. Aitvaris, the surprise MVP of this team, able to buff, debuff, clear buffs from the enemy with Dekaja and even blind opponents, shutting them down and hitting them with fire damage, to say nothing of him packing Makara-Karn, an instant way to shut down an enemy's turn. This guy is awesome. Bicorn is mostly moral support, but he kept finding me good items so I kept him around, and Critical Melody could save us in a pinch. Matador, our cleanup crew designed to keep everyone buffed up and tank hits with Enduring Soul, on top of him having some strong defense himself. Valkyrie. You'll see. Holy shit, you will see. Tsuchigumo. I don't really have any purpose for him. He just sort of tagged along. Okay. Alice, the other damage-dealing monster alongside Gogmagog, and she's able to strike the weakness of enemies and pretty much tear through anything that's not immune to dark, which, hey, nothing is. Kushinada Hime, our main healer and the emergency Dekaja user in case something goes horribly wrong with enemies buffing up too much. And lastly, Jackass, the idiot who thought doing this challenge run was a good idea. It's time to end this. We face the Golden Dragon, Huang Long, Lord Koryu, depending on what you call him. And hey, after all these preparations, surely it can't be that bad, right? Yeah, this fight is rough, and after his initial barrage of Megidolon, he'll start summoning the 4 elemental gods to assist him in battle, with up to 2 being on the field at a time. He'll always summon them in the order of Byakko, Genbu, Suzaku, then Mizuchi, but you're likely to not see Mizuchi because you'll either win or die by the time he gets into the battle. And they've done away with their tier 2 spells, going straight to Dying tier. Thankfully, once he's summoned one of the 4 gods to assist him, he'll tone down on the Megidolon spam, saving it for his Magatsuhi attacks, which, yeah, make sure you stack some evasion buffs, because it'll be hard to survive 4 Megidolon crits, even if you've lowered his attack all the way. I learned that one the hard way. Instead, he'll opt to see what your party is weak to and try to use the Dying tier spells of that element. So try to have something where, even if you have a character with a weakness, have another one that nullifies it to make sure he's burning, or he's using up double the amount of turns. Be careful, however, because if you have a party without a weakness to the Dying tier elemental skills, he'll just go and spam almighty attacks over and over again. But what about his elemental companions? Well, Byakko mostly just exists to attack you and die, and Mizuji takes so long to spawn in that he's a non-issue. But Ginbu is a real pain in the ass if you're not careful, because he'll spam Luster Candy throughout the fight, buffing the entire party's stats by 1. Have someone to clear the buffs, or you'll be in for a world of annoyance, hurt, tedium, all the bad stuff. Interestingly, Eidvarus proved himself to be the true MVP of this run with his ability to blind Huang Long, and also technically the others as well, and throw up Makarakarn to turn the weakness-sinking Dying spells against him. It was going well, with Suzaku not even getting a chance to act, but then something terrible happened. Ginbu went up in flames, along with any chance I had of actually winning this fight, because now Suzaku was going to show her true threat. Without a spell to deflect, Makarakarn wasn't able to stop Huang Long's actions, and Suzaku casted Lullaby, putting the entire party to sleep. Then they went for their charged Magatsuhi gauge. None of us could wake up in time, and we proceeded to get completely slaughtered in a single turn. I was discouraged here. The fight was going so well, but one slip up I didn't see coming turned everything around in the worst way possible, and I died in an instant. I know that's how Megaton games go, but it hurt. And it would take multiple attempts for me to get anywhere close to that level of progress again. But in the end, I remembered something. Huang Long was weak to sleep. I lost the fight due to an unlucky sleep proc. But Huang Long had a weakness to sleep, and I had just the girl for the job. Yes, it was Valkyrie's time to shine. I decided to give it another attempt. This time, putting Alice behind safety and having Valkyrie front and center. The battle began, I got my attack in, and I went for Dream Needle. And sure enough, it worked on the first hit. I opted to have Gog Magog pass his turn and wait, while having Mott, well, I opted it was better to have him charge up and prepare for later. One Rakunda, and swapping to Alice later, it was a crucial moment. We were going to find out. Would Huang Long slay it? Would Huang Long stay asleep and not nuke us on turn 1? Yes. Yes, he would. And with that, the battle was locked in. Victory was within our grasp. We didn't just win, we annihilated him. But we do still have one more battle, so I guess let's take care of her.
I'm detecting a demon.
Bethel's reinforcements, I presume? Unfortunately, it seems your timing was a tad off.
Keep your guard up, young man. I sense a dreadful power in this one.
The angels that infested this area are now dead. And I dare say they could use some company. But I'll spare you a few final moments to curse your fate. Sirens are blaring, the doors are closing. This is the last call. Hop on, let's go. My name is Nuwa. Prepare to die.
You'd think that Nuwa would take a look at our power and see that she's only skilled for main story and leave, but no, she wasn't going to let us walk out of here for free. So I decided I was going to do something funny. I was going to take this lady down in one shot. I utilized all my buffs and debuffs to get it ready, got Alice all powered up, and ready to release and unleash a full-powered die for me on her, sure to take her out in a single blow. I completely forgot she nullified darkness. Okay, that was actually pretty funny. In all honesty, she did put up much more of a fight than I figured she would at this point in the game, taking hits well and even dealing back some okay enough damage. But ultimately, while her defensive stats were nothing to scoff at, the fight wasn't too bad once I chose to take her seriously. In fact, you don't even actually have to kill her in this fight. She'll congratulate you for a job well done and let you go once she reaches half health. So, from here the story continues as normal. Yakumo shows up, we play a game of 20 questions with the two of them, and we're free to leave the netherworld. The challenge run is truly complete. Overall, this was certainly different, but ultimately I had quite a bit of fun with it, and I hope you enjoyed this little mini challenge video. I definitely wouldn't recommend it for a first playthrough, and I mean, yes, obviously you can just grind like a crazy amount and make things easier, and I probably did grind too much near the end, but it was still a ton of fun. And it's a cool way to spice things up in a repeated playthrough, even if it was just a fun one-off, and hey, there's plenty of other ways you can make things tougher. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and letting me know if you want to see a little follow-up where I tackle the DLC bosses that spawn in this region of the netherworld. With that said, the video's over, and thanks for watching. Later.